I am Matthew Jenkins Yarashevitz, Music Director Designate of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
And I'm Rachel Hagemeyer, President and CEO.
This is Orchestrating Change. We are delighted to be joined today in person by Alison Norris, who has served as one of our conducting fellows here at the Canton Symphony Orchestra throughout the 2024-2025 season. A fellow Cincinnati native, Alison originally earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Valparaiso University in mechanical engineering before earning their Master of Music degree from the University of Wisconsin and Professional Studies diploma from Manhattan School of Music, both in orchestral conducting. They were the founding conductor of the STEM Wind Ensemble at Valparaiso and have served as cover conductor for the Madison Ballet and Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra. They have also produced and conducted a large-scale performance of Messiaen's massive Turangalila Symphony in New York City in a concert which explored the intersection of contemporary music and gender expression. Alison Norris, it has been a delight to work with you throughout this season, and we are so glad to have you join us for the podcast. Welcome to Orchestrating Change.
Thank you, Matthew.
It's so nice to have you. So if you wouldn't mind just starting us out, sharing a little bit about you. I know we just said a lot about you, but a little bit more about you and how you came to be and why music became a part of your life as a young person.
Yeah, so as Matthew said, I actually started in engineering for my undergrad. So I played actually flute my whole school life. And then in college, I really realized that my passion was definitely for music and specifically music leadership. So I started a wind ensemble while I was there of STEM majors, and sort of our whole goal or our mission statement as the STEM Wind Ensemble was to try and convince people to engage with music at all levels and no matter what their chosen careers were. So that's sort of how I got my slot into music, and I just really loved collaborating in chamber music and also in leadership. And yeah.
When you say music leadership, What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought of myself as like a musical leader before, like I thought of myself as a conductor. So like with this ensemble, like really having like a cohesive mission together and then like sort of exploring that together and like performing works and like working together with how we wanted to, you know, shape and share this music, but also like how we wanted to interact with our community members. So I think, like the leadership aspect is what came to me first and like the collaboration aspect. And then I ended up doing orchestral conducting through the orchestra director at Valparaiso University, Dennis Friesenkarper, a wonderful man. So that's how I sort of started to orchestral conduct.
Yeah.
So you've told me a little bit about this just when the two of us have been talking, but tell our listeners a little bit. You had an internship as an engineer and you realized like, I cannot do this. I need to be in music. I need to be conducting. Tell us about that light bulb revelatory moment for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the reason I was drawn to engineering in the first place is because like I had kind of had this belief that like engineering was like about problem solving and like helping people. And I actually did like a lot of work in Engineers Without Borders. So I would go to like Haiti and do mission work there. And we also had projects in Nicaragua.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I think like I ended up doing some corporate engineering. Very different. And I mean, I worked at Texas Instruments actually for 2 summers, and like to be clear, like everyone I worked with was amazing, but like I just knew like this really wasn't for me. Like I don't think I excel necessarily, or I didn't really enjoy like doing that kind of highly technical work that felt really distant from like my mission as a human being, which is to like empower people and inspire people. And I just felt like this isn't the right direction. And I think I'm not necessarily as excited about practical math and sciences. So I think like this just felt like the right choice for me. So
it's interesting. There's a lot of universities or community programs of people who end up in STEM or science as a profession continuing to play music. there are several like all doctor orchestras of like community orchestras of all, people who, people who do music are smart. Very smart people. They're very, that do a lot of STEM stuff. And I think it's really cool that a lot of them continue to do it. But it's very difficult to be in a STEM field and feel empowered to continue. Like, so I like the STEM Wind. Do you know if it's still happening?
It isn't. After I left, I know. The pandemic did not help.
Well, okay, I was going to say pandemic. And yeah. But that type of program that is very, very cool. And I hope that more universities, at a time where a lot of universities are getting rid of music programs when they don't have a very strong conservatory, where they just have music as, there's not a lot of majors, but it's so important to keep that in the school for non-majors, to have a musical experience for non-majors. I think it's so important.
Because those are the people that are going to go and make a lot of money in another career.
Yes.
And hopefully by their love of classical music that was fostered by playing in their university orchestra, they're going to be patrons, donors, board members, and the people that keep our industry afloat.
Even like not as an economic thing. Like I really think like music is such an abstract art form. It's like hard for people to engage with it by purely listening, because we're not used to listening hard and like listening
it's not a skill that is taught right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think one of the easiest ways to make music more accessible and like, have people more involved and enjoy it more is like to be involved in it firsthand. Right. I think that's so important, like having those groups. I conducted a medical orchestra at Wisconsin,
there you
Madison.
go.
Yes. So I was going to say, I was like, I think I didn't want to say they do, but I was so sure they did. Yeah. That's very cool. And it also, I mean, like a lot of people understand the idea of teamwork and working together for like a common purpose when it comes to sports. And this like unified, because it's also like a very visceral physical thing, but with music, it's the same. It's similar, but also with like the emotional aspect of it too. And being able to be like nuanced emotionally with a large group of people to create something is such an important skill for everyday life as humans.
Yeah. I mean, people are always seeking like forms of community, right?
Yeah.
Community building.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I could talk about that for a long, long, long time, but we don't have to. Yeah. So you did mechanical engineering and then you got a degree in conducting as a master's. How soon into your undergraduate did you go? Yeah. When was the light bulb? Okay, now I have to go into conducting instead.
So actually, like I said, like it was leadership first for me. So I switched. I added a music major, not a degree technically. It's just a major as a part of my Bachelor of Science. Okay. I added that maybe my junior year, and I took 5 years instead of just 4, because that's when I started like this wind ensemble. Okay. And then by the end of my senior year, so going into my last year, I was like, okay, like this is definitely it. Yeah. And that was the moment that I like did the last concert that I did before I graduated was with the orchestra. So
nice. Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. And so you went to University of Wisconsin and then Manhattan School of Music.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of auditioning and what it's like to audition? I'm surrounded by conductors, but what it's like to audition, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what it was like when you auditioned at Manis, and maybe, I don't know what has shifted in the time of like, what is that experience like? And you're still auditioning for things, for higher educational things.
Yes. And like professional things.
And professional things too. So just a little bit curious about the shift of just, doing a degree program to auditioning to be in a program like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much easier when you're young and like ignorant, like, cause then you can just do it. And now I feel like, I don't know. And as things get, like the level gets higher too, like I feel like you think about that too. You're like, oh, I want to be good enough for them or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, like I always find auditions enjoyable because like you have a moment where you have an opportunity to make an impact with like a group. And like, I think my goals have definitely changed from like when I started auditioning for things back for my master's and like versus now. Like before I was just like, I want to do this and feel the music and have a great time, which is good. But now I'm like, I just want to go in and I want one person, like at least one person in the ensemble to like make a musical connection and sort of like shape the music together. Like I'm like, okay, like I feel this spot this way. Do you feel it this way too? You know what I mean? And like, I've had that happen in a couple of my recent auditions, which has been amazing. And I feel like that's a success if that happens.
That's such a great perspective to have.
I would also say it shows a maturity level of that. Now you audition for your master's, you audition for your postgraduate diploma. Now it's the professional world or the very, very highest levels of higher education. And when I was going into it, I mean, I got my master's degree at Madison in 2016. So I did my audition in 2014. And all I thought about the whole time was like, I have to look really great up there and I have to be really receptive to whatever the teacher says and just be so gung-ho about trying everything that they suggest because that's what they want to see. And I wasn't even thinking about really making music. I was more thinking of I need to get in to the school. And I think that obviously it was just an immature mindset at the time. I was 24 years old. I had barely studied conducting in any formal way, even though I'd been doing it for 5 years, but I had barely studied formally in any way. And my priorities for what needed to happen in the audition were so like basic comparatively. And the fact that you are at a point in your career where you can go into an audition and say, my goal is to make a connection with somebody in there, as opposed to my goal is to like check all the boxes to win the audition. It's a wonderful place to have arrived at.
Right. And I think in general, I'm just a fan of like, I feel like doing music right, you're never going to like appease everyone with what the right way of doing music is. And so for me, I want the goal to be something that feels fulfilling for hopefully more than just me, right? Like I hope this audition experience is fulfilling for the musicians in some way too.
Yeah. That's a very, a very mature mindset to have. And something I tried it with like my students when we're so stressed about playing music for someone or we're so stressed about an audition or something that and finding the joy in it and finding, it is an audition and there is pressure and there always will be. And pressure is good, but how can we use that pressure to like just make connections and make music and have fun? We should be having a good time. But it's very hard to get there mentally and to not just check the boxes. Yeah. It's a lot easier. I've always found it's a lot easier to make music when the whole purpose of the music making in that moment is a performance for the audience, trying to make a connection for the audience. Whereas if I'm trying to make music where I'm thinking like, oh, there's a spot at the school on the line, there's a salary on the line, that, I find it so much harder. And I don't know if the same is for you, but it's always been easier to just let it flow when you don't think about everything that's riding on how you do in that moment.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, I feel like if I'm doing a performance, and I say this to like all my music friends too, like playing everything right, like anybody can play, not anybody, but like a lot of people can play things correctly, especially like for these like high profile auditions. Like they can do it right. They can get all the notes in. But it's like, in my opinion, I would rather there be a mistake or like the risk of a mistake, but you're going for that full like musicality and you're trying something new. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't want a boring performance that's right. I want something that you're emotionally attached to, even if it is not perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you are non-binary.
Yeah.
We were just talking before we went on the air. You're our third non-binary guest that we've had on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about how you realized this part of yourself and what it means to you.
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question.
I know, it's a hard question. It's a big question, but
I mean, I've never been like super attached to being like feminine or female. I would say like growing up, like I wasn't necessarily like very excited about either possibility. I was just sort of going through school.
Yeah.
And maybe that sounds like, I didn't feel decisive about a gender. So I'm like, non-binary is perfect. And that's kind of like what it is. I think too, like I grew up in a religious family and I went to Valparaiso University is a religious affiliated school. So there was not a lot of like queer exposure in either of those realms. So as I sort of moved away from Indiana and a little bit in Madison, Wisconsin, but especially like being in New York now, I do feel like I've had more opportunities to like be exposed to different like types of people and different gender expressions. And I think for me, I was just like, at first I was like, oh, I think I'm a lesbian. And then I was like, no, I just think it's a gender thing actually for me. So yeah, I think it's just like the more exposure I got to different possibilities, the more it opened my mind to like what's out there. And I think for me, it's just like, neither gender is something that I really engage with. And so that's kind of why.
Yeah. And I feel like in this topic, people care about pronouns like so much, and they really, really get hung up on that part of it. And I, like we can definitely talk about that part of it, but I think that I've met so many people who, I mean, like sexuality and gender expression and all these different things. It's just so individual, and it's such a huge spectrum that even boxes for like what people think of as like the quote normal queer expressions of like gay, lesbian, like that's not how, it's not clean cut. It's such this huge spectrum. So how do you go about do you even talk about this with people? Is it something that you just, if people call you she, her, that you're just like, and we're just, do you even correct people? Is it something, because some people are like very, it like can be harmful if they are misgendered, or it doesn't super matter. We're all, but how do you kind of go about engaging? Because it's such a big conversation and people seem to care a whole lot.
Yeah. I mean, for a while I was using like any pronouns, and then I was like, that's fine. But I think when you do that, then people just are like, oh, thank God I can use she, her. And I'm like, oh. So that's why I was like, okay, they, them. Now you don't have a choice. Yeah.
I'll tell you that I've had that experience, that I've had friends who said you can do she, they. And this was a little while ago I'm like, okay, I've always known you as she. So that's like what I'm used to doing. But then they'll circle back and say, actually. I really would like they. Yeah. And then at that point, it's like, all right, now I have to do this.
Yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah.
So I know from the other side of that, that experience.
Yeah. Right. And like part of the problem is not necessarily like the pronouns part of it. And I think like people get really hung up on the pronouns. They're like, okay, they is so difficult for me or whatever. And it's like, okay, maybe it's hard for you to change your language, but like the important thing, like the more important thing that we're getting at is like, why does the gender binary exist? Like, why do you treat me in a certain way based on how I look? Yeah. Right. And it's like, so there are people who will use they for me, but then not necessarily treat me any different. Right. There's a whole element of like, performativeness that happens in some spaces. And I think it's like, in a way it's like good and it has good intent, because I think it's slowly changing people's mindsets about it. But, I guess like, to answer your question about like, do I correct people if they use the wrong pronouns for me? It depends on the situation. Yeah. If I'm in somewhere that I'm like, okay, this is a red state, they're probably not gonna like this. Like I usually don't say anything. But I am lucky that I have a lot of friends and people that I work with who will correct it subtly in conversation or more forcefully if they need to. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's usually how I would say I approach that.
Yeah, it's such a people care so much, for no apparent reason.
Well, the thing is, I feel like genuinely, like I'm kind of a gender abolitionist, so gender anarchist.
Hey, that's okay.
I feel like
I'm into that.
Right. I don't know. I feel like
I'm not into that, but I respect it. Yeah. I respect your feelings about it, even though and I'll say like on the flip side of this, at no point in my whole life did I ever question that I was male.
Right. But that's the thing is I think people don't really question why we behave, or not behave, but like why we are supposed to behave the way we do and why people view us the way that we do. And I think this like comes out of like feminist movements. So it's like, it's really thinking about like, is this person like whatever you wear is fine. It's like one thing. It's not necessarily the same as like your gender expression. Right. But like, I think like the way in which that we perceive people and we judge them is part of that gender dichotomy, right? And it's like, if we stack all of these things in either of one of two categories, I think we're always going to be held back in some ways, because there's always going to be a choice that we have to make for each one, right? Yeah. You're going to have to make decisions about them. And it's like, you can say, these are both equal, but you're going to have different versions of how you approach them
Yeah.
in some ways. So I think like nothing wrong with being feminine, being masculine, wearing certain types of clothes, or, wanting to mix those up. I think those are all great.
Yeah.
But I think it is, I don't know. I think people would be happier if they didn't feel like they needed to fit in a box.
Yeah, and I think it's also the like from just like this expectation that you're going to figure out, you're going to like fulfill the role of something within your own life. I think probably people who grow up female or present as women feel this a lot more. And I'm sure, like, I don't know what the male perspective of like this is, but my fiance and I talked about this a lot because in our house, like I make more money than he does. And a lot of people have pointed that out to us. Which has nothing, like, we don't point it out to each other. But like people point it out to us because I'm the woman and he's the man, and he's a teacher. So it's like, it's very hard in America to be a teacher and be a breadwinner in any situation because we don't treat teachers very well. But it's something that since recently getting engaged, I have like the roaring societal, you are a woman expectations have just come like flooding at me, and it is very weird because I'm not someone who feels all my friends were boys. I was a huge tomboy. I wanted my hair short. I was like, I very much have always felt like a woman, but I also didn't really feel incredibly feminine. And so it's so weird recently that everyone's like, so what's like the bridal shower, all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, we gotta get out. I was like, I can't deal with this. This is too much expectations. I can't.
This is fascinating for me to hear because as somebody who's in a same-sex marriage, and to a man, of course, like I never experienced any of this. My husband makes more than I do, but it's like we're both men, so nobody ever said anything, and all of this, like the wedding stuff, I was the one who was like, I really want a bachelor party. I want it to be the most epic thing I've ever done. And it was. Yeah. But like, I was the one that drove it rather than anybody else from the outside.
The number of people who have asked me when my wedding date is. And I've been engaged for a month. And they're like, when are you getting married? And I'm like, a date sometime. I will. It'll happen. What do we, it's very, this is like the first time in my life that I've felt like this huge, like, this is what is normal, do this thing. And it's very weird. It's very disorienting. So I'm like, I'm all for the, it's just, marriages are fun. Weddings are fun. Yes, it's going to be a great time. However, yeah. I think also to your point of like, so many people have experiences that are not outside the gender binary and aren't queer and aren't transgender, but the fact that like people can have those experiences and that's totally fine and you can be cisgender is also normal and
it's
fine.
So normal.
Like that
and
is,
I think like maybe like the sad thing is like people will have like these experiences but then be discouraged from them. So like thinking like, for example, of my brother, and I love my mother, she's come a long way since our conservative years, but like he, like when we were younger, I would like put nail polish on him and he liked it. And then my mom would be like, he can't wear nail polish. He's a boy. Yeah. And like a lot of people have this experience. And we talked a little bit about like how you said, like you kind of felt like a tomboy and you feel like a lot of people born female are attracted to queerness because they want to break free of those roles. Yeah. And I think like that's very true for people born male too. Like, you get like an opportunity, like you have more opportunities to experience things that you are told are forbidden. Right. And like one of those things is like intimacy or kindness. And it's like, it feels like sometimes the way that we treat masculinity in our culture is like very cold, right? Yeah. Which is unfortunate. And that's what I'm saying, like, too, when I say, like, I think everyone would be happier if they, like, step away a little bit from, like, gender roles. Like, I think you might find yourself in a better...
Yeah, like, men who are cisgender but have, like, more quote-unquote traditionally female or feminine likes or interests, like, why do we put genders on instruments in the orchestra? Like, for a long time, right? Like, women can't play double bass because, or men,
men don't play the harp. Like, I told this story on the Garrick Olson's episode, the previous episode of the podcast, that Vaughan Williams thanked the orchestra at the premiere recording session of his 6th symphony. And he said, "Thank you all, gentlemen of the orchestra, and you too, the lady harpist." So like the fact that even when orchestras were all male, that there was a woman playing the harp.
I mean, harp used to be historically very masculine, and I'm
Right, and then what causes things in history to make things flip? It's just
it is weird that we do have like gendered rules about instruments now too.
Yeah, in the modern world, like people associate flute with women and low brass with men, right? Like there's
flute with women is breaking down.
It's
a little
breaking
bit
down a little
James
bit.
Galway, and there are many principal flautists at orchestras that are men, but. Low brass, like that is when Carol Yonch won the Philadelphia Orchestra tuba. It's like, wow, there's a woman playing a tuba in a major U.S. orchestra. It was a huge deal in the profession.
Yeah.
But why in the 21st century was it still a huge deal?
Yeah, it's crazy. And so like the fact like it's an inanimate object and we are assigning a gender to it, and we do it with clothes, and we do it with so many things, and what toys you're allowed to play with and not play. Like I played with plastic dinosaurs and trains.
That's awesome.
And if someone just saw my toy collection and they didn't see anything else about me as a small child, probably would have assumed I was a young child based on what I played with.
I had similar toys to that. So
right?
Yeah, I can
you know,
relate.
a lot of people I have, and then I got older and I was supposed to play with other things. And so I was like, I will try out American Girl dolls. I will get an American Girl doll. And I only picked the ones with the cool storylines because I cared about the history. And then we went from, right, so it's just so interesting how so much of our society is put into these two boxes, which is so like, we got to get more boxes. We put things into other categories, but we could talk about that for a very long time, I'm sure. But
now you've had some very interesting geopolitical legal adventures that have resulted from you being non-binary. You went to China and you had a non-binary passport, and it was not accepted in China. Yeah. And you had to go on a little bit of a roundabout adventure through East Asia to get that fixed.
Yeah. So
I forgot about,
Yeah. So background on that, like I was invited by a composer to do like a conducted premiere of one of their pieces in China. And I had just gotten my passport renewed, and I got the non-binary sign because I was like, hell yeah, that sounds so cool. Not a good idea because unfortunately, and also now, just so you're aware, you cannot get non-binary passports in the U.S. anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder why.
We could go on about that, but let's not.
Anyway, yeah. But anyway, so I went to China and on my passport, and I already had my visa that I had gotten. It was I think it's a 12-year visa. They used to give out 12-year visas.
They did.
And so I had my visa, and I was going
they
through.
Didn't match.
Yeah,
what it was.
Yeah, but the problem was they didn't have like an X for their like visas, so they were like, no, we're not going to take you unless you get your passport fixed.
And then X being a third gender option other than an M or an F.
Yeah.
Yes, so I had to go to Hong Kong basically to get like an emergency passport and then get a new visa because they voided my old one. And then I went back to China. But yeah.
Crazy.
And like in the program and everything, they were like, we have to call you she, her. Which like, I don't want to say like, to be very clear, like the people of China are not like opposed to like queerness or gender expression, but there is like, different cultural things to be aware of, and their government is different. Yeah. So like, I'm not saying this to like,
this is not a blanket statement on all of China.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think like, a lot of probably Europeans and maybe Chinese people feel similarly when they come to the US too. Like there are problems that our country has that make it difficult for other types of expression to be
right.
Here. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you told me that story. That was recent. That was this past. Yeah, that was recent. It's crazy to me that is a problem, but we will hopefully figure that out in the future at some point. I would like to say sooner rather than later.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. However, there's so much we could talk about here. We could probably monologue on this for a long, long time, but we won't do that.
I would love to tie all of this that we've just been talking about back into your conducting career and ask you about the remarkable performance that you produced of Olivier Messiaen's Turangalila Symphony and the connection that it had to gender awareness, justice for the transgender community. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about that project and how you brought it together, the genesis of the idea, how you brought it together, and how you made the connection between the music.
Yeah. yeah, maybe as a transition from what we were talking about with like non-binary things, like I've been saying, like a lot of this is about open-mindedness. And so for me, like Turangalila is a pretty abstract work. It's a pretty abstract piece. It's quite atonal. And I think like it felt very parallel to me to the trans experience, right? Because I think like this is something that's abstract for a lot of people that they might not easily be able to digest or understand, especially on like the first listen or the first time you like meet somebody who's trans or the first time you start thinking about gender yourself, right? Like this is something that's almost confrontational, like the music, you know? And I think around the same time, like I was listening to this, like I heard Turangalila for the first time and I was like, oh, it's so good. I love this piece.
That was my reaction too. I loved it from the first moment I heard it.
It's not like you listen to it and I can't think of anything else I've heard that feels like it. Yeah. It's a very unique.
Messiaen's music in general, I think is really cool. But yeah, you should listen to Turangalila Symphony for sure. And if you don't like it the first time, listen to it 3 more times and then you will. But yeah, so I was like kind of thinking about this piece and like how much it felt like, because the piece itself is about divinity and like these gods like playing with like the cosmos, and you know it's like everything is part of like their grand design or something like that. And it's like for me it felt like this sort of like transgenderness is like this kind of like mystic, like we're playing with something that is so abstract and so like strange. And it felt like, I mean, like a big part of like trans community, like artists will do a lot of like artwork that reflects like gender as like the divine, things like that. That's a pretty big theme I think a lot of transgender people pick up on, because you know you're you know like the Christian rhetoric of like your body is a temple or whatever, like I don't know, like you're sort of changing yourself in your own image kind of thing. But anyway, so I was kind of like thinking about all these elements. And then at the time, I was like, okay, I got to find an on matanu player. And I did. I found one crazy.
This is a very, very rare instrument whose most famous use is in this particular piece. And thus, not many people play it.
It's such a cool instrument. And it's like the theremin, but like the theremin, you use your hands to like dictate the pitch and like moving closer or farther away. But with the on matanu, you actually use your finger on like a keyboard and you slide it across. So in my opinion, the on matanu sounds better because it's a little more accurate. And plus you can do more effects because there is a keyboard there. So you can move a little faster. Very cool instrument. We need more of it. But anyway, so I actually found this person like through social media. Like I reached out to somebody who like posted a lot about on matanu, and I was like, do you know anybody in New York? Because if I'm going to find an on matanu player, it's going to be in New York, right? Yeah. And I did. And I found somebody, and they're also non-binary. So yeah, their name is David Karp, and like they joined us for this, and it was so amazing. They're an incredible player. But yeah, so that's how I found the on matanu player. And then around the same time, like when I moved to New York, I started to get very involved in, there's like a kind of like an underground community of people who make very abstract electronic music. So they have like a board of like different like digital elements that can manipulate sound. And so they'll like, usually it's like improvisational. So they'll like, you'll be there and you'll be listening, and you'll just be like listening to this like strange music that they're coming up with on the spot. And along with those, there were a lot of artists who would make improvised film to go along with these.
I saw that part and I was like, I don't understand how this works. I'm very excited for Alison to tell me.
So I met a couple of people who do like they create visual art that goes along with the improvisers on like these electronic instruments. Cool. So like I don't know exactly what programs they use, but like different types of programs that can make like this weird abstract art that'll match like the feeling of the music.
Cool.
So yeah, I worked a little like with a couple of them who I'd met, and a lot of them happen to be trans. I find that in a lot of like weird art spaces, you find a lot of people who are in general very questioning and like very open-minded and want to experience as much of the world as possible. And that overlaps well with the transgender community. So I ended up finding like a lot of artists there, and then you know, some other friends who had who were in the film industry or like visual media industry, and I sort of collaborated with them. I was like, okay, like these are the different movements. Which one do you feel relates to you most, and do you feel like you would want to express? So the idea being, it's such an abstract piece. It's hard to listen to. I wanted like another element that people could engage with when they're listening to it for the first time, and something else that is like reflective of the music, but also like reflective of like the trans experience. So that's kind of how that happened.
Wow. Okay. My practical arts admin brain is, how did you pull like it off, rehearsal space, funding? Was like all of that to get a project like this going? Was there support for a project, one of this scale and two of this nature? Like, did you find support for it?
Not financial support. I wish there had been. Unfortunately, it's so hard, I feel like, especially if you're just starting something, to like get financial support. Yeah. So I unfortunately was, I was doing this on my own, and I'm not particularly wealthy. So I did have to ask, everyone I asked, I was like, hey, like this is unpaid, but like, are you like, I told them about the project, right? And I think like talking about the project and like what it was and like what we were trying to do, I think inspires people. Yeah. Like we're not just playing like a Mahler symphony because I want to play Mahler, I want to conduct Mahler, like it's about like, okay, what is like the vision, and like how will people be involved in the vision, and like, is this something that you care about? Yeah. It was also a fundraiser for the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund. Great.
So that's going to say what the turnout was, and then the funds from the concert. I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
I don't know the exact turnout because like I like that
you blacked out.
I mean, like I wasn't like looking at the audience and doing a count, and we didn't like sell tickets or anything. So it was more like, here's like the programs, and here's how you can do like donate. So I'm not sure. But yeah, I forgot the other question.
Well, did you feel, so obviously everyone who decided to be a part of the project supported it and felt this desire to be a part of it because they chose to do something for free, right? Which is a lot, that's a huge thing. Did you feel like there was an audience? Did you get any feedback from people who'd maybe never even entered that world before, who were learning for the first time?
I think a lot of people like from the audience members that I met felt that it was like very special and something they had never seen before. And I had like musicians come up to me or like people like I didn't even know come up to me later and be like, that project was so cool and inspiring, and like we want to do something like that again. Like will you help us to do this, like that kind of thing. I also remember you asked me like about other funding things. We actually had like so many people, like community members that helped out in various ways. So like the hall that we used at MSM, and MSM was very gracious to us and like letting us use spaces. Good.
So you didn't have to pay to rent.
I was going to say that was
rehearsal.
I was like, that's a nightmare to try to do.
Which is remarkable. Yeah.
Remarkable.
Like, that's very fortunate.
Very cool.
Yes, and they also helped me with like the rentals, which we can talk about later, because I have thoughts about rentals. But so
of the music,
the renting of the music,
or of the owned Martineau.
Or did they?
No.
Did he own his own Martineau?
Yeah. No. Yeah. So. So for the projector though, in the hall that we used, they didn't have like a screen in like the actual like hall. So we had to, like basically I had to ask around like these like audio visual warehouses and be like, do you have a projector screen we can use? And, one place did, and they were like, okay, we'll let you use it because it's a huge hall and like, you have to get a special screen for it. And I was like, okay, like just so you know, this is a student project. I have no budget. And they were like, oh, we'll charge you like a third of the price. So it was like so affordable. Like I was like, okay, great, I can do this. Yeah.
Because the point, it kind of goes into the next question I wanted to talk about, which is, I feel the world of music and orchestra and like large scale music making, which I feel like the three of us could talk about this for a little bit, of the fact that it's so hard sometimes to justify to like the world or to just like the normal public why orchestral music. So I'm not saying like classical, not like necessarily tradition, but why do we have to get this many people on stage to get this, like what is the purpose of that and the validity and the relevance of like this large scale thing? Because it's so inaccessible a lot of the time. It still has so many boxes and traditions put around it about what we do and don't do. There's still so much of the population that does not feel welcome to be a part of it. And there is not support financially, at least in America, for a lot of exploration and the trying of new things when it comes to actual funding, when we're thinking about foundations and grants and budgets within I'm thinking about like our own budget as an orchestra. You know, we are so tight to just get coverage, you know, to get our finances covered, that like to take risks is something that is very difficult, and we don't really have the chance to do that. And then to figure out a way to communicate that, if we're trying something new and different, to an audience that's going to show up and care, and to get the word out in a world, I mean, this is such a layered question, obviously, but to get the world, which is so saturated with just information. And we were talking earlier today at lunch about like everything that our world saturates us with is, you said you talked about it like it was candy. Like it's just sweet, good, just rushes of bright lights and information. Well, to cut through with a Turangalila is like, it's, you know, like this whole like, it's like, how do we actually, like, it's so hard to be innovative and creative in this space. It's just tricky.
Yeah. And I think like part of it, I think like going back to what you said first, like about orchestras, like why orchestra? Yeah. Well, for me, I think what draws me to orchestra is like the sustainability aspect of it. And like, I think some of that is starting
It's so interesting that you use the word sustainable in terms of the orchestra. This is fun.
But it's for me because of the musicians, right? Like there's a great article by Andrea Moore. I don't know if I should bring that up, but there's a great article by her that talks about like precarity culture in music. And it's one of my favorite articles.
Oh, I'm writing it down.
But yeah, like I think for musicians, like orchestras have always been like a sustainable source of income for them. And it's like one of the moments where we can all like come together and create something like cohesive as like a community, right? As musicians, as a community, as part of our community, right? So I think like, to me, I think like the orchestra is like a sustainable type of music making in the ways in which I think like, I don't want to say gimmicky because that's not quite the right word, but like some like newer things I think tend to like run their course, right? Like it's like this was made to just do this cool thing once, and like it has a lot of like excitement at the beginning, and then kind of like that tapers off, right? As it becomes less new and less cool. And I think another like pro about orchestras is like they are in person. And I'm a believer that like over time, I mean, I'm so tired of my phone. Like I don't want to see anything on Instagram. I'm so like burnt out, and I'm like, you know, I use social media like as much as anyone else my age, I would say. And it's just like, I kind of just want to be somewhere and like be engaged. And maybe that's not like where we're at right now, but I do like see that as being part of the future, especially like when we see like so much like AI and like other things that are just made to like please us a lot or like try and cater to us. I just feel sometimes you just want something real, right? You want to go somewhere and like experience something visceral, and you just can't get that from your phone. Yeah. So I do think like there is hope in orchestral music for that. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing about the orchestra, you know, my predecessor here, Gerhard Zimmermann, once said that the thing that really turned him on to the orchestra was that when he first heard an orchestra, he was in college and he was sitting in his college's orchestra in the trumpet section. And he said at that moment, my concept of what an instrumental ensemble's color palette went from 16 colors to 64.
Yeah, he got the 64 pack of crayons.
Only in an orchestra do you get that. And an audience member, a common audience member, might not be able to articulate that. But there's something deep within them that why they would go to the orchestra as opposed to, or in addition to, a solo recital or chamber music. There is something you can only experience with the orchestra.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about like listening and the fact that we don't, as a society, we're really bad listeners, I think, especially in America. I think we're not great listeners. I don't think it's a skill that gets taught. And orchestral music, not always, but for most of it, it doesn't have words. There's definitely, obviously, like vocal works that have words. But it is something that you have to actively listen to for a long period of time and draw your own conclusions about, or actively listen to and just let it affect you in whatever way that it does, and not try to dictate what that is, instead of being, listening to a message, which is, words are incredibly powerful. Poetry, songs, lyrics, songwriters are incredibly important and powerful too. But there is something different about music that doesn't have words, and what that means for us as a society and what that can do for us as humans. But it is very difficult for a lot of people to sit and listen when there's not a directive of like, what am I doing? So like the addition of, the visual element that you added to Turangalila, like, we've done several concerts that we then also have visual elements too, and adding this in, which definitely is good. But what can, this idea of accessibility and this idea of like welcoming to the orchestra, when so many people, when their first thought of it is just like, nope, not for me. Right? Even if they've never been to one, because there's such a perception of what the orchestra is.
There's a concert going culture that I think is like antagonistic to like listening to orchestral music in some ways.
Wow. So expand upon that.
Well, I mean, I think when people think of going to the orchestra, they probably think of dressing up nice and like listening quietly and then going to a nice dinner after. And like, I think, some people are like, okay, that's not for me because I want to watch like sports on TV or something like that. But I feel like if you do concerts in different ways, if you like invite the audience members to explore the music a little bit more deeply, and like we break down like exactly what the rules are, like, okay, we have to play every single movement of this piece, right? Because I'm supposed to, and no clapping in between, right? It's like, I don't know. I know that there are some people who have had great concert experiences, but they clapped in the middle of a piece and everybody looks at them and glares at them. And it's like, don't do that. Like, they're having a good time.
Just let them have a good time. We talk about on this podcast a lot, and we've talked about a lot, how the more diverse voices we have in a hall, in the audience, on the stage, making music, the better the product is going to be, and the more, life experiences we're going to bring to something. And yet we still have so many structures. What's talking about finances, right? Mm-hmm. If there's people who aren't funding stuff, then how are our transgender experiences going to be celebrated on stage if we're not funding it? Right.
And in our current situation here, there's a move away from that. That like a few years ago, it was easier to find funding than it is now. Yeah. And it's just it's certainly concerning to me. And this isn't even my direct life experience, but I just can't even imagine.
I think it's a two-part problem. Like, part of it is like you have the people who are always sort of against these things in general, like who aren't open-minded and don't really want these things to be brought to light. Like, I'm speaking specifically here of like diversity and that kind of funding. Like, there are people who are closed-minded from the beginning. Yeah. And then you have people who are open-minded to it or might even be part of that community, but who have gotten burnt out because of, I think a big problem in music and in society in general is like kind of like we were talking about with non-binary things, but like for like diversity in general, I think we don't necessarily examine like the underlying biases. So like we'll say like, okay, we're going to program like a female conductor or female composer or something, but we don't like necessarily treat that piece of music with the same amount of thoughtfulness that we do of the rest of the program. Like, are you programming this piece because you're just so convinced that this is the right piece, or are you programming it because you need to have a woman on the program? And then like, how do you talk about it too? Like, do you say, okay, we have Beethoven, we have Brahms, and then we have our female composer. So it's like, I don't know, like, I think like people are genuinely interested in hearing different types of voices. And I think different types of voices make really unique and valuable music. But I think like we really need to think about like the biases that we come with when we are trying to be like progressive with this. Yeah.
It's something I ever since coming back from the pandemic, I've made an effort to program music of female and minority composers on every program that I do, whether that's a Masterworks program, holiday pops, youth symphony, everything. But not just to program a piece, but some of the pieces need to be concertos and symphonies, like second half of a program type pieces. I did Florence Price First Symphony, it was one of my favorite symphonies I've ever conducted.
It was fun.
Like, it's an amazing piece of music. And I programmed that specific one. I loved the piece and I wanted it to be done. But to not just throw a piece on that's a 5-minute concert opener just to say you did it, but to dig deep and find like the meaty works that deserve to be heard, that are going to take up more than half of a program. And not all musicians want to play those pieces. No. I've encountered that. Like many musicians, even younger ones, still want to play the standard repertoire.
Yeah.
Like, and not to say we shouldn't play the standard repertoire, but it's like, if they see a program that doesn't have anything that's super famous on it, they're less excited about it. And that actually really, really surprised me, because as somebody who's explored all of this great music that's outside of like the most famous works of the canon, I'm like, it's all great. It's all amazing music. And it all excites me so much. And it surprises me when even fellow musicians are not as excited, let alone patrons, donors, and the like.
I think this is like one of the things, like we talk about, like how do we make orchestras like sustainable for the future in terms of like programming. Like we really need to do a lot of hard work in terms of how we introduce these pieces, how we think about them in our intent. And like as conductors, like I think one of our key roles is to be convinced of the music we're playing and be like, this is like one of the best pieces I could think of for this program. And like part of that is like you can show them, like show people, like community members, musicians, how it fits in with the rest of your programming. Like I feel so strongly about this because it's gorgeous, and it also like it pairs well with like, I don't know, like the masterworks, Beethoven or something that's on the program. And I think too, kind of what you're saying is like we do tend to put like the like diverse composers like as little 5-minute slots at the top. And that's also a problem with contemporary music too, is I think we also sideline it. We put it at like a very small like contemporary piece, and then okay, now with the real music. Right. And I think like if you work with your community to like enjoy these pieces, and you're very thoughtful about your programming of them and how you introduce them, I really do think like people can learn to be open-minded about it. It's just that they haven't experienced it before. And I think honestly, like in my opinion, like the bigger problem to me, more than like diversity in programming, is like the eras in which we program. We don't do enough contemporary music because I think contemporary music is like, this is what people can relate to. I mean, maybe they don't realize it yet, but like this is the music of people of your generation, like people who experience the world that you do. Yeah. And like there are a lot of diverse composers, and some of them you might just be like cis white men, and that's also good too. Like they have great music as well. Yeah. So I think like,
and they're living sometimes, and they can come and talk to you, and it's crazy.
And it's great. No, it's great, and they can tell you firsthand like what they meant by doing something in a piece, and they can kind of like, I don't know, generate new ideas with you. So I think that's so important and overlooked.
Well, I'm particularly glad hearing you say all of this, that you got to cover Adolphus Hailstork's first symphony.
I love Hailstork.
Back in March, which was so much fun to introduce to this audience. And as a multi-movement work from the 20th century by a composer who is still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so much, that's I talk about like the traditions that still kind of exist in our world, like the conservatory education and the mindset that gets imprinted on a lot of young musicians about how do you get successful in this field? Well, it's by playing the canon and being very good at it and then succeeding at an audition. And so if they're, here in Canton, they want to, like, I got to play the canon so I can get really good, so I can get a better, like, it's all of this thought that it's not, that gets imprinted because of the way that we have decided to build up. It's a pretty, elite way of thinking about things, and it's so expensive to have lessons than to have an instrument. There's all these things that we've talked about a million times, but right now we're in a time, and we've hinted at this a little bit, where there's a lot happening to stifle diverse voices, and there's funding being taken away, and like you mentioned, it's the opportunities for DEI funding doesn't really at a federal level exist at all right now. And at a state level for most states doesn't, because it's a trickle down from federal funding, and there's certain mandates now and all that good stuff. But how can we still, push through that in a time where it's being stifled to express things that are differently and to take risks and to try something new. Like, how do we create social change through music?
Well, yeah, I think, we're in a very interesting situation because we're at the very end of we're dealing with adults, right? Like everybody who comes to the orchestra, everyone who plays in the orchestra is an adult, right? So they've already gone through education system, either lack of musical education, which is a big problem in the States, especially for a lot of our audience members.
Yeah.
And for a lot of our musicians, they have a very conservatory approach to things. Like you were saying, this is the standard rep. This is what we learn. This is how we do it correctly.
Yeah.
Right. And it's I think, part of why I want to do the kinder concert with you guys is because I'm so insistent that programming is one of the most important things we can do, especially at a young age. We need kids to know that there is new music, that atonal stuff isn't scary because atonal, tonality is something learned. And that's why different cultures have different ideas of tonality. So if you show a kid Schoenberg or something like that, they're going to be wow, it's so loud. I love it. So I think at all levels, educationally, we need to break down what types of music kids can listen to and encouraging them to listen to all types of music, because then one of those kids might be a lover of atonal music but might never have gotten to hear it growing up, so they just don't listen to it, Yeah. And then in the conservatory approach, I think it's so important to of course we have these incredible mentors in these conservatories who are incredible musicians, and they grew up in a time where I think music hadn't solidified in the way it has now, in terms of what is correct. I'm using air quotes, correct. And they kind of built up what our contemporary sound is, in classical music, the correct contemporary sound. And I think kind of breaking away from that a little bit and encouraging people okay, here's how I've played my instrument well all of these years. If you have a different idea and in your phrases or in your expression, encouraging them to try that. I also think again, coming back to contemporary music, because I think it's so important, for students to have the opportunities to explore contemporary music, music students to explore contemporary music. And there's a lot of barriers with that in the orchestral world with rentals and things like that. But yeah, I think being exposed to contemporary music makes the difference. Myself, through my master's, I wasn't really that into abstract atonal music. I was very when I thought of new music, I was okay, I like it to be tonal and accessible. I believe accessible music is the only way forward, right? That's the only way people are going to enjoy new music. But I went to New York and I started my degree at Manhattan School of Music, and one of the first concerts I heard was their composers concert. They're Taktis and their composers concerts. And I was just blown away by the level of musicianship. These were people who were already good at their instruments, who loved playing contemporary music. And it wasn't tonal and it was weird. And they're doing weird things with their bow that's not on the strings or whatever. But I was just this sounds so amazing because they have such a high level of musicianship. And, at all levels of musicianship, to be clear, this is effective, but they're just so convinced by the music that they see something that's worth sharing in it. And that really affects you. So from that moment on, I was I love contemporary stuff, the weird stuff too. Because it's so fun. I don't know. So I think if you can convince people to be on board with that sort of vision, I think it's really rewarding for everybody involved.
There's value monetarily. So if we're going to go monetary value here, monetary value only exists when there's demand. Exactly. Value does not exist in a vacuum. It does, right? There's money is not a real thing if no one wants the thing. And that's a very eloquent way of saying it, isn't it? But in a society in which that is so key to it, we can assign value to things by programming it and by listening and by taking the time to understand, and by finding, I think that that's so important because there is validity on all types of music. And I think it's the same way in the world of orchestral music. There's certain orchestral musicians who turn up their noses at Pops concerts and don't want to play the Pops concerts. And hey guys, that's just as important as music. That music is very important. Pops music, our rock bands and traditional folk music and pop music is just as important as orchestral music, and we can't start putting things on pedestals about what is and is not important.
And I think as someone who's conducted all sorts of concerts here at the Canton Symphony in my 8-year tenure, that the most important thing from just a business perspective, as a business organization, that we touch as many people in the community as humanly possible, so that these people are proud of the fact that their community has an elite professional orchestra. Like, it doesn't matter why they come to the orchestra. If they love hearing a rock band play with a symphony orchestra and they come every year to see that, they appreciate that their community has an orchestra. Like, it doesn't matter how they engage, it's that they engage. And that everybody, all of those in the profession, need to remember that, like, ultimately, we don't do what we do if we don't have an audience. Like, we're not going to just play and get paid to play to an empty...
We could play
to an empty
whether
hall.
or not finances come along with it is a different question.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we make all types of music that appeal to all corners of the potential audience that our community has.
Yeah.
That is hugely important, and playing every type of music we can.
Yeah.
To do that.
I'd love to have more. And this is why, like, the funding of it all, and like wishing that there was, can someone give us like a $500,000 grant to just play? I need a grant that we can just have a listening experience where we hire the orchestra to come play weird music, and we invite an audience and we just chat the whole time about it. And we say, okay, we're about to play something weird. And then we're going to play it a second time after we've listened to it. And then we're going to talk about it. Like, imagine if we had a whole concert series where we just got to play music and chat with the audience, and it didn't matter what the ticket sales were because we were just but that's not it's just the fact that we can't, like, I would love to do that. I would love to do that and have a specific listening series where it's like, we're trying something different today, and we might all hate it. And if we do, great. Now we've all learned that we hate this together. But, it's just, can someone hand us $1 million so that we can just hang out and play? I think that would be super duper fun. But we could chat. I could talk about this for a long, long time.
No, I love that. I've definitely also thought about that too. Like, because like you're saying, like, so many, or so much of like how we come to enjoy music is from like repetition, right? Yeah. Like hearing things a lot. So like,
but our concerts, we play the piece once and then everyone leaves. I'm like, wait, no, come back. Let's do it again.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it would be nice if we could like play things over and over, or like generate like a community that either actively listens or always actively listens, or, that they listen to the music beforehand and like come to learn to love those composers in general, so that like, okay, they see, I don't know, Webern is on the program and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard some of Webern. It's weird, but I like it.
Get ready. It's going to be weird.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
So I'm sure we could talk literally all day, but in the interest of time, we're going to ask the question that we ask all of our podcast guests at the end of each episode. And it is a very open-ended question. So take it completely as you will. How do we orchestrate change?
That's such a hard question.
I know.
I believe like we orchestrate change by inspiring people with awe, like the music that we create, and being committed to justice in our classical music community, and trying to examine our underlying biases and present people with new types of listening experiences.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I thank you so much for chatting with us. It's been such a pleasure to hang out with you all year. And this is our last time hanging out, but it's been so wonderful having you. So glad you got to do the podcast, and I hope we get to see much more of you in the future and hang out more and talk about this more, because we could talk again all day.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you, Alison. It's
you.
been a pleasure. Conductor Alison Norris, who has served as a conducting fellow here at the Canton Symphony Orchestra for the 2024-2025 season.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams.
Our audio engineer and mixer is Nathan Maslick, with video and audio editing by Shoreline Media.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.